The subject that we're addressing tonight is dealing with the spirit of Amalek. The first question that came in tonight is so pertinent to where we are going, because the question is, what is the spirit of Amalek? And I want to talk about how things are passed down from generation to generation in relation to certain spirits. For example, you would say that Amalek is a descendant of Esau. We know that. In the same way that Moab is a descendant of Lot, when Lot had an incestuous relationship with his daughter. Not only Moab, which means fatherless or what father, but also Ammon is a descendant of Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughter. So when you look at the spirit of Amalek, when you trace it back, it traces all the way back to Esau. I believe that where we are now historically in church history, I am very concerned that we make it through this critical crossroads of history. I have never seen, I've been in ministry for a very long time, a quarter of a century, been saved for 28 years. I have never seen the attacks that have come against leadership in the church like I've seen in the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And many times leadership has given that opportunity to people by the manifestation of their vulnerabilities, their frailties, their feebleness, and their failures. Here's a promise. It's a guarantee. Critics are going to show up in your life when you are either favored or your faults are made known. Either one of those two things are going to be an attraction to critics. The Lord spoke to me 2 years ago and told me, I'm going to put you through the school of coping with criticism. And I had no idea what I was about to face. I was talking to my son today after church, and as we traveled together, how much our struggle has helped us and made us stronger. We would not be the men we are today if we would not have been through the things we have been through. In relation to the spirit of Amalek, Exodus chapter 17 is one of the most intriguing chapters in all the Bible to me. Verse 1, the Bible says, and Moses set out with the whole congregation of Israel. And there's a word that is mentioned twice in that verse. Verse 1 it says, as they went on their journey from the wilderness of sin. And then it says, and they departed from their journeys, which means they moved one more time, or more than one time. There were several transitions. There were several movings. In Christianity, that is relatable to us because we are always progressing. We're always moving. We're always being delivered. We're always departing. We're always exiting. We're always entering. In those transitions, every time you exodus a place that has fortified who you are, the enemy will set up himself in such a way as to diametrically oppose you getting to the next place that God has assigned to you. Thus the spirit of Amalek. In verse 7 of Exodus chapter 17, we find something interesting transpiring because the people, the congregation, began quarreling with each other because there was no water for them where they were. Need will always put demands on commitment. You'll never know who's with you as long as all your needs are met. But when you go through a season where you're not resourced, then the commitment level of those around you will begin to really be seen at that point. So in verse 7, Pastor D, the people said, is the Lord among us or not? Almost saying, if God was with us, we would not be going through what we're going through. I'm sure no one else has ever felt that. But these people, on asking that question, is the Lord among us or not? Verse 8 says, the Amalekites attacked the children of Israel. So the question is, what is the spirit of Amalek? That question is answered in Exodus chapter 17 and in Deuteronomy chapter 25, where God says, you will always remember Amalek because I will perpetually set myself against him from generation to generation. You will blot out his memory, thus denoting the fact that God says, I will remove his effect in the fight, but you'll never forget the war you went through. I have come through some battles in my life, and I can tell you the effect has been dealt with, but the memory is still there. And I'll never forget the things that God brought me through. Now, I'm going somewhere with this, and you need to pay close attention, because the question is, what is the spirit of Amalek? When the people asked, is the Lord among us or not? That was an invitation for Amalek to show up. When the people you are connected to begin to say, where is God in all this? That is an invitation to a spirit that comes from the hindmost parts to remind you of your seasons of frailty, failure, and feebleness. That's what Deuteronomy 25 will tell you is the spirit of Amalek. It's a spirit that comes up in front of you that was behind you to remind you that you're really not all that. But tonight, we're going to let you know that when that spirit comes up from your past, in that time you did fall, in that time you were feeble, in that time you were faint, you're going to look at that spirit and say, I recognize who you are. And you are not going to stop me from getting to the place that God assigned me to get. Wait a minute, I got to adjust myself because I feel something here. Listen. He produces things like Agag. Right. The spirit of Amalek produces sons like Haman that will want to blot out the seed of God in the earth. But for every Haman, there's a Mordecai. For every spirit, there is a spirit that says, I recognize you. I know what you are about. And Mordecai gets in the ear of Esther, and he says, you're going to save an entire nation. And don't forget that you have come into the kingdom for such a time as this. And I'm here to tell you, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know where you are. But if the spirit of Amalek is whispering in your ear that he's going to take you out, we came by to tell you on this evening that Haman's going to be dealt with on his own gallows.